Persistence in Action, Soldiers of the Civil War, covering Joshua Chamberlain, Thomas Jackson, and George Meade. Persistence can be defined as never giving up, never quitting, no matter how hard your task is at hand. Joshua Chamberlain was born into a farming family in September of 1828 in Brewer, Maine. Chamberlain would one day become one of the greatest American generals to have ever been. In 1848, he attended Bowdoin College instead of West Point like his father had hoped. In 1852, he graduated with the highest of honors. After graduating from Brewer College, Chamberlain attended Bangor Theology Seminary for 3 years and then continued on to earn a master's degree at Bowdoin. In the summer of 1862, Chamberlain strongly disapproved with slavery on moral and religious grounds and was convinced that the secession violated the Constitution. Giving up his family life and his career as a professor, he joined the 20th Maine Infantry as a lieutenant colonel, thus beginning his legacy as a military leader. The greatest example of Chamberlain's persistence takes place in Gettysburg on July 2, 1863. As General Longstreet artillery had just finished shelling Devil's Den and Little Round Top, the Army of Northern Virginia was pushing back the Army of the Potomac and looking to catch them on the run and pin them in Devil's Den. Chamberlain and his men would reach Little Round Top just in time. Ordering his 308 men to dig in and pile rocks to make defensive walls, for they would end up finding themselves being the far left of the Union lines. If they gave up their ground, the whole Union army in Gettysburg would be wide open for an attack from the rear. Shortly after starting the dig-in, the 20th Maine was attacked by nearly 350 men of the 47th Alabama. The 20th was able to hold off the attacks for 2 volleys, and on the third, when Chamberlain and the 20th executed a nearly impossible maneuver by having his left flank swing back to form a right angle while under fire. The fighting had now become so intense the 2 units had become hand-to-hand contests, just as the 15th Alabama and its 500 men moved in to reinforce the 47th. Chamberlain, now being wounded in his left leg, with only 1/3 of his force left, was now running low on ammunition and had to prepare themselves for yet another charge from the 47th and the 15th Alabama. Just as the 4th charge from the 47th and the 15th was starting, Chamberlain yelled "bayonet" and ordered yet another attack of extreme difficulty. The order was right wheel forward, meaning that his left lines would continue forward in charge, but also push right, forcing the Alabama units to push right into adjoining Union troops. At this point during the charge, a Confederate officer, arm length away, had pulled a pistol and pointed it directly at Chamberlain's face, but much to his surprise, the weapon was empty. Despite being outnumbered, Chamberlain never gave up and managed to defend Little Round Top and even take some 400 prisoners, including the 47th's commander. Another one of Chamberlain's most respected times in the military is when he attended the surrender of Lee and his army at the Appomattox Courthouse, where out of respect for Lee and his men, Chamberlain ordered his unit to attention and saluted Lee and his army as they passed by. During Chamberlain's course of service, he was wounded 6 times, had 5 horses shot from underneath him, captured 2,700 POWs, and 8 battle flags, all within 24 engagements. He would also go on to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions at Gettysburg. Unlike Chamberlain, Jackson had a more difficult time in school. Born in Harrison County, Virginia, which is now considered part of West Virginia, Jackson had lost both of his parents at a younger age and ended up living on his uncle's farm. With the passing of his mother, Jackson did not have a very good track record for attendance at school. However, he did have an appreciation for education and forced himself to master subjects he felt necessary for him to be successful. He was not as what we would call today as a determined brilliant. Jackson's reputation for education would continue to follow him, for he barely even got into West Point. At first, as he started out in West Point, he found himself near the bottom of his class and always seeming to get into trouble. But as the years continued, he slowly managed to work toward the upper end of his class ranking and only managed to receive 7 misdemeanors throughout the year versus 15 for his freshman year. Jackson would go on to fight in the Mexican War in 1851 and would leave the Army for a professor job in philosophy and artillery tactics with Virginia Military Institute. At the start of the Civil War, Jackson started to receive a lot of praise and became very famous among Southerners and his troops for the winning of Battle Manassas, which is where he earned his famous nickname, Stonewall. Once Jackson was teamed up with Robert E. Lee, the two of them were nearly unstoppable. Lee would think of the attack, and Jackson would plan it and execute it with such tact and awareness. Jackson would eventually die from a fatal wound he would receive at the Battle of Chancellorsville. It is said that after the Battle of Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee had begun to cry and stated, "We did not win Gettysburg because Jackson was not here." With George Meade being the hidden hero of the Civil War, just 3 days before the Battle of Gettysburg, he found himself being promoted to lead over the entire Union Army and would hold this position till the end. Little is ever kept of Meade's on record. However, it is known that President Lincoln was very dissatisfied with him for not chasing down Lee after Gettysburg and putting an end to the war right there. However, it will always be known with only 3 days' time to prepare for battle, General George Meade would lead the Union on what is today known as the turning point of the war with that great battle at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. In conclusion, it is easy to see why these 3 Civil War officers are so highly loved by Civil War enthusiasts alike. They all have their own way of showing persistence in life and in combat.